You're listening to the Play Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks, your source for centered and focused play therapy coaching.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Podcast, where you get a masterclass in child-centered play therapy and practical support and application for your work with children and their families. In today's episode, I am answering a question from Emily in Washington State. Actually, I'm answering several questions from Emily. So she emailed and had quite a few things that she was wanting to get some thoughts on. So we're going to kind of dive into a multi-question from the same person episode. Before we do that, however, I want to update you on a couple of things. First and foremost, the live podcast event was incredible. So a huge thank you to all of you who were on that call. And I don't know if you all heard this or know this, but originally my Zoom account maxed out at 100 participants on a call. And you all registered so quickly in so many that I hit the 100 mark long before the event was supposed to happen. So I ended up increasing the account so that I can have 500 people on a call now. And I think when all was said and done, there were about 140 or so that registered. And it was just a really exciting time to see faces and understand that all of you out there all over the world are so excited about CCPT. We had probably, 20 or so states represented. I think 7 or 8 countries represented. So really amazing. Thank you all for being a part of that. If you were not able to, or if you missed it, do not worry. We will definitely be scheduling more of those. So stay tuned. We will let you know when we're going to have another one. Also, before we get into the question, I had several people email me before and around Christmas with kind of some end of the year reflections, if you will. And so I wanted to just share a couple of those really quickly because I think that they're so encouraging and it just kind of encapsulates, I think, where we all are at the end of 2024, start of a new year of 2025. A couple of people emailed and I just wanted to share thoughts. So Naka in the UK emailed and said, I was just reflecting on the blessings, accomplishments, and growth I have had this year, and I found myself saying I have a bigger worldview. I love that. Don't forget, y'all, we get the same universal outcomes that our kids do when we're CCPT. Through my relationship with God and my CCPT practice, I've become more confident in myself. My fears and anxieties have become less and manageable at most times, more than before. And this is because I am now able to see myself outside the difficult things that have happened. It is with a cheerful heart that I express my gratitude for God's hand upon you and what you do. I have found an identity as a counseling therapist that aligns with my beliefs, and I have a community I belong to. That makes me so happy. So thank you, Naka, for sharing that. And then Julia in New York emailed and said, I've been reflecting on this Christmas and this season and how very grateful I am for you and your podcast. I felt so lost before I learned about CCPT. I knew I always wanted to work with children, but felt like there was a kind of language barrier between the interventions we are taught in grad school and how children's minds and hearts are wired. After learning about CCPT, it felt like I was suddenly introduced to a whole new world. Yes, we all feel that way, I think. And then she says, these reflections were brought to my mind when I recently watched Miracle on 34th Street. The scene where Kris Kringle connects with a small Dutch child, speaks her language, and knows her Christmas song always brings tears to my eyes. It's a moment of pure acceptance and connection. While watching this movie after experiencing CCPT this past year, I found myself marveling at how Kris Kringle evokes the spirit of child-centeredness and displays the be with attitudes. It inspired and invigorated me to continue bringing this attitude into my work with children in 2025 with a refreshed fervor. So Julia, thank you for that email as well. So to both of you, I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with me and letting me share them with the podcast world. All right, so let's dive in now to Emily's questions. And Emily is an outdoor preschool owner. So I'm not going to read everything in the email because she kind of gave me a lot of background about her, but she's actually listening to both podcasts, so the parenting podcast and the clinical podcast. And she is an educator. She's the parent of an autistic child, and the experience in the public school system was actually very harming to him and to their family. And so she said that there were no play therapists in the area. And so she decided to dive in and learn about it on her own. So Emily, high five to you. I think sometimes necessity is the mother of invention, and sometimes it's what we need to force us into the things that we're meant to do. So I think that your experience led to CCPT finding you, and I'm happy for you about that. So then she says, my son has grown so much with these methods, still has a ways to go. He went back to public school at his own request and has recently been processing more of his trauma from 2 years ago. So then here's getting to the question. I run a child-centered outdoor play school. My background was in traditional preschool, but it didn't feel right. I hated what I was required to teach. My son transformed my life by pushing me to educate myself deeper than any of my schooling or work training ever provided. I learned about how much more important free play is and much better strategies to support physical, social, and emotional development. So I left traditional schools and started my own, fully child-centered and almost completely outdoor. That's so exciting. So my questions are, do you believe there is room to merge CCPT and a fully child-led preschool? Absolutely, yes. Simple answer. I'll elaborate more. Is there a way to integrate play therapy into a school so that kids can learn in a social, constructivist environment and include kids that would maybe not ordinarily sign up for play therapy? I feel all kids would benefit from time in this type of environment, whether or not the parent feels they need actual one-on-one therapy. But the way I see the majority of parenting and the majority of school environments treating kids, I feel most kids need this. All right, so Emily and all of the rest of you who either have a history and background in the education system or you are actively a school-based play therapist, there is a really big movement that I'm witnessing. And I don't know if you all are aware of it because you don't interact with as many therapists as I do around the world, but more and more and more therapists are pouring into making changes in schools and evangelizing CCPT in the academic arena and equipping teachers with child-centered principles and meeting with staff and faculty and principals and headmasters and everybody in the higher up elements of the school so that we can have change at the academic environment. So in answer to your question, do I believe that CCPT can be integrated into a play school? Absolutely. I think that I don't think this. We already have evidence that CTRT, child-teacher relationship training, is effective. When we equip teachers with CCPT principles, it revolutionizes and transforms their classrooms. So we already know that that is effective and it is empirically supported. And for you to be at an outdoor play school, that just seems like it would blend together so seamlessly. Your second question, is there a way to do this so that children would not necessarily sign up for play therapy, but would benefit from this? Absolutely. When parents, when teachers, when any adult in a child's world interacts with them in this way, honors them in this way, understands these principles, children benefit. And I think that parents, I agree with you, may not necessarily pursue play therapy for their child, but I think they would see the value of the play therapy approach and CCPT principles in an academic environment. And then the follow-up question, do I need to have a specific degree to join your collective or take your trainings? I get asked this question a lot, Emily, so I'm actually really happy that you brought this up so that I can answer it to everyone all at once because I usually respond one-on-one to emails. You do not have to have a specific degree to join the collective or take my trainings as long as it is not required ethically and legally for you to practice where you live. So in the States, for example, you cannot be a play therapist unless you have a mental health, at least master's degree. Not necessarily mental health, but not necessarily an LMHC, in other words, but you have to be a social worker, you have to be a counselor, you have to be a therapist, you have to have the master's degree in the mental health field to get licensed as a social worker or a therapist or a counselor. So in the States, for example, you do need to have a specific degree, but in other countries, you do not. So can you call yourself a play therapist regardless of your background? Yes, absolutely. If you provide play therapy, you are a play therapist. That is unequivocal. But to join the collective and to take my trainings, as long as you are able to practice where you are and do play therapy, and it will not violate any legal or ethical. Now, because you're a preschool teacher or a play school teacher, you could probably say that you provide play therapy and you would not be required to have the mental health degree that we do because you're doing it from the educational standpoint, not the mental health standpoint. So anyway, the questions I get all the time are, what are the requirements to take my training? If you can do play therapy where you live, then you can participate in the collective and you can do the Corewell CEUs and you can participate in my coaching programs. And really the goal of all of those is to equip you to really deeply and fully understand the child-centered approach and be fully adherent to the model. So if that is your goal, Emily, and all of you actually, if you want to be fully adherent to CCPT and you want to hone your skills to the highest level, the collective, the CEUs through Corewell, and the coaching programs are the channels to get you there. All right, so that was email number 1. Second email that I'm going to answer question from Emily as well. I'm wondering your thoughts on mindfulness and SEL activities in schools and at home that are Pinteresty and crafty, or techniques that are taught through songs or something like that. Things where an adult presents a coping skill to a child and practices in a time when the child is already regulated. For example, breathing techniques, books on coping skills, calm down corners with charts that have regulation zones and emotion wheels, using a sensory bottle to calm down, songs that remind you to breathe when you're mad, various things like that. I see so many ideas shared about how to teach such and such emotional skill, and I wonder if they are beneficial or just another thing that makes adults feel like they're doing something beneficial. Oh boy. All right. I don't really ever tread lightly, but I'm just going to answer your question with your final statement. It's just another thing that makes adults feel like they're doing something beneficial. That's it in a nutshell. If you are fully child-centered, if you believe that a child is not rational, and you should because it's true, that's not really a belief, that's a fact. So children are not rational. They don't have the cognitive capacity to process things. They don't have abstract reasoning. They're not verbal. They cannot receive intellectual approaches to emotional experiences. So, and I can envision everything that you're saying. I can imagine all kinds of cute, Pinteresty, crafty things that are all over the internet. And I think it would make any adult feel really content and satisfied with, oh, I did this and I made this and I created this and I whatever. But it's agenda driven. And none of it is age appropriate and none of it is developmentally appropriate for kids. So it is just another thing that makes adults feel like they're doing something beneficial. What we need to do is unconditionally accept the child, unconditionally love the child, convey the be with attitudes to the child, fully adhere to CCPT principles, trust in the self-actualization process, and believe that the child will work through whatever they need to if given the time, the tools, and the opportunity. So, Emily, to speak to your outdoor play school and CCPT principles, you trust the process, you trust your kids, you trust your adherence to the skills, and you don't need to do anything else. All of that stuff, you want to know what I interpreted through that whole list of things that you suggested there? Pressure and burden. I don't want to have to teach breathing techniques. I don't want to have to read a book on coping skills. I don't want to have to create a calm down corner. I don't want to have charts. Oh, can we please burn every chart on this entire planet? That would make me so happy. I don't want to have to deal with regulation zones. I don't want to talk about emotions wheels. I don't want to have a sensory bottle. All that stuff is just busy work. And I hate busy work. And I hate the burden and pressure of feeling like I'm responsible for someone else. The whole premise of CCPT is that kids know what they need and they will work on it. So why in the world do we need to get in the way and intervene and put all of this expectation on ourselves and them when it's unnecessary? Just provide the environment, provide the relationship, and they'll do what they need to do. So Emily in Washington State, I'm excited for you and your play school. I'm excited that you are an outdoor environment for kids to learn. And I'm so excited that you're integrating CCPT principles into that. So thank you so much for all of the questions. I very much appreciate it. You all can reach out to me, Brenna at thekidcounselor.com. By the way, you all are sending some pretty intense questions lately. So I'm kind of liking this depth of questioning that's emerging. So keep them coming. I appreciate hearing from you all. And we're diving into a curriculum series on neutrality this week. So there's a little teaser for the curriculum content this week. We're going to do some neutrality discussion, and I'm not sure how many weeks that will span, but several for sure. All right. Love y'all. We'll talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and resources, please go to www.playtherapypodcast.com.